This September, Japan updated its export control list, adding as many as 110 Chinese companies to its blacklist all at once. These companies cover a wide range of cutting-edge fields, including semiconductors, AI chips, and quantum computing. Even cooling equipment used for chip heat dissipation has been included in the restrictions. Some Western media outlets reported that Japan's latest export controls on China are unprecedented, even tougher than those imposed by the United States. But what no one expected was that China's counterattack left Japan with almost no room to fight back. You might be wondering, why did Japan suddenly decide to sanction China? Who is really behind this move? And what actions will China take next? If you like our video content, please click to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can receive all our latest video content. Now, let's get into today's topic. As we all know, semiconductors are the oil of the information age. Whoever controls semiconductor materials and manufacturing capabilities holds the key to technological dominance and even national security. That's why, starting in 2022, the United States began restricting China's semiconductor development from upstream materials to the high-end equipment required for production. Nearly every link in the chain has faced suppression. So far, more than 15,000 Chinese companies have been added to the U.S. restricted entity list. And as we all know, the United States has never lacked loyal followers. As one of America's core allies in Europe, the Netherlands recently cited national security to forcibly take over China's Nexperia Semiconductor, freezing global assets worth 14.7 billion yuan and initiating the dismissal of its Chinese management team. Moreover, starting this year, Japan has also ramped up its pressure on China's semiconductor industry. In January of this year, Japan announced stricter export controls on technologies related to chips and quantum computing, while also expanding restrictions on advanced equipment and software. Although the Japanese government publicly claimed that this adjustment applied to all non-whitelist countries and was not specifically targeted at China, it was obvious to everyone that Japan was cooperating with the U.S. in suppressing China's semiconductor industry. After all, during the same month, the United States also updated its export control rules, introducing new restrictions on the export of advanced computing semiconductors. This new regulation classifies countries based on their ally relationships, defining different levels of access to U.S. chips worldwide, and China has been placed in the most restricted category. By September of the same year, Japan once again updated its export control list, this time directly adding 110 Chinese companies to the restricted entities list. These companies and institutions are mainly concentrated in critical technology fields such as semiconductors, artificial intelligence, lithography machines, and quantum computing. Compared with the U.S. approach, Japan's measures are even harsher. While the U.S. mainly restricts certain high-end chips, Japan is targeting the entire industry chain. Even auxiliary equipment and chip cooling devices are included in the restrictions. Under this policy, China and other non-whitelist countries will face far stricter approval procedures when applying for related exports. Even whitelist countries must submit documentation to Japan for review, so that Japan can assess whether the exported equipment could be re-exported through third parties to China or other blacklisted nations. It's worth noting that before Japan added those 110 Chinese companies to its export control list, the United States had also announced, in the very same month, the inclusion of 23 Chinese companies in its own restricted entity, List 13, of which were related to semiconductors and integrated circuits, covering key links from chip design and manufacturing to supply chain support. Japan's near-simultaneous decision to blacklist 110 Chinese companies was clearly meant to coordinate with the U.S. crackdown on China's semiconductor technology sector. Moreover, Japan has repeatedly stated that in its semiconductor export control policies, it will optimize its measures to remain aligned with the United States. So, why is Japan so eager to suppress China's semiconductor industry? In fact, during the 1980s and 1990s, Japan was once the dominant power in the global semiconductor industry. Companies like Toshiba, Hitachi, and NEC together held more than 50% of the global market share. However, this advantage did not last long. After entering the 2000s, Japan's semiconductor industry was gradually overtaken by South Korea's Samsung and Taiwan's TSMC. At present, no Japanese foundry has the capability for mass production of 7nm chips, while China's SMIC has already achieved successful trial production of 7nm chip samples, meaning that Japan has actually fallen behind China in this field. Although in 2022, the Japanese government announced its support for the domestic company Rapidus, pledging an investment of $21.6 billion to develop 2nm process technology. The core technologies it relies on actually come from the American company IBM. Moreover, its pilot production is not expected to begin until 2028, at least 5 years later than TSMC and Samsung. This means that Japan, once a semiconductor powerhouse, is now almost entirely absent from the development of high-end chips. As Japan's semiconductor industry declined, its market share inevitably began to be eroded. For example, 6-inch silicon carbide (SiC) wafers used to be one of Japan's strong products. Before 2020, a single 6-inch SiC wafer cost as much as $1,300. Chinese companies not only had to pay high prices, but also wait up to 6 months in advance to secure an order, and even then, there was no guarantee of availability. But today, multiple Chinese companies have achieved mass production of 6-inch SiC wafers, bringing prices down to $800 per wafer, nearly 40% cheaper. This sharp price drop quickly shook the global market. Japan's Rome company had to slash its prices to around $900 and urgently invest in the development of 8-inch wafers to maintain competitiveness and profit margins. Another example is Japan's JS Foundry, which produced low-voltage MOSFET chips under 100V key components used in home appliances, such as air conditioners and refrigerators. Previously, these chips cost as much as 40,000 yen per 1,000 pieces, severely squeezing the profit margins of Chinese appliance manufacturers that depended on them. However, after Chinese companies successfully began mass production of chips with the same specifications, the price dropped directly to 18,000 yen per 1,000, a 55% reduction. Driven by cost advantages, more and more Chinese appliance makers switched to domestic alternatives. This led to a massive loss of orders and ongoing financial losses for JS Foundry, which ultimately declared bankruptcy in 2023. Japan knows very well that if it doesn't act to curb China's semiconductor industry now, it won't be long before China's low-cost chips completely dominate the market. However, it's important to note that despite multiple rounds of suppression from the United States, China has consistently introduced effective countermeasures. And when it comes to Japan's deliberate provocation, China will certainly not remain silent. As we all know, Japan is a country extremely lacking in natural resources. Due to its small land area and limited mining capacity, Japan's rare earth supply is almost entirely dependent on imports. Reports indicate that in the past, about 90% of Japan's rare earth supply came from China. According to available data, Japan's total rare earth imports in 2024 still exceeded 8,300 tons, of which more than 5,000 tons came from China, meaning Japan's dependence on Chinese rare earths remains above 60%. However, since the beginning of this year, China has implemented stricter controls on rare earth exports. This has prompted Japan to actively search for alternatives. It first signed a cooperation agreement with the United States, seeking to strengthen its rare earth supply chain through economic incentives and joint investments. Japan has also expanded cooperation with countries such as Australia and India to collectively respond to China's export restrictions. Yet, even with the combined efforts of these 4 countries, their total processing capacity is still less than 1/5 of China's. To secure more rare earth supplies, Japan has also been promoting the development of rare earth recycling technologies. Through policy support and financial subsidies, the government encourages companies to build recycling facilities to extract rare earth elements from discarded electronics, automobile components, and other sources. But if China further tightens its approval process for rare earth exports to Japan or significantly delays the approval period, what consequences would Japan face without China's rare earth support? Currently, nearly all of Japan's high-end industries depend heavily on rare earth materials. If China were to impose a full-scale restriction on rare earth exports to Japan, the industry that would suffer the greatest blow would undoubtedly be the automotive sector. From what I understand, producing a single new energy vehicle typically requires 2 to 3 kilograms of neodymium iron boron magnets, and the performance of these magnets depends critically on the addition of the element dysprosium. Once the supply of dysprosium is interrupted, the production lines of automakers such as Toyota and Honda would be forced to shut down. Their roughly 15% share of the global new energy vehicle market could be quickly eroded by competitors within just 6 months. If China maintains its export restrictions for an extended period, Japan's automotive industry could face annual output losses exceeding $20 billion. Of course, without China's rare earth supply, Japan's semiconductor and electronics industries would also be severely affected. Rare earth elements are irreplaceable materials in key components, such as photoresists and sputtering targets. Take Japan's semiconductor giant Renesas Electronics. As an example, its power chip production lines require nearly 100 tons of rare earth compounds every month to maintain normal operations. Once the rare earth supply is disrupted, chip prices would inevitably rise, and the development of Japan's 3nm process would slow down, causing it to lose momentum in its competition with Chinese and Korean companies. Even more critical is the role of rare earths in defense and strategic industries. Whether it's the precision gyroscopes used in missile guidance systems or the microwave components needed for radar equipment, all heavily depend on rare earth permanent magnets. The mass production plan for Japan's self-defense forces Type 12 anti-ship missile, for instance, has been delayed due to uncertainty in rare earth supply. This kind of choke point issue directly touches the bottom line of Japan's national security. Yet the country has no feasible way to secure sufficient rare earth from alternative sources in the short term. According to a report by Japan's Ministry of Finance, over the next 5 years, the overall cost of Japan's high-tech industries is expected to rise by 15% to 22%, which could even cause some defense-related orders to shift overseas. In my view, Japan holds no real advantage in its confrontation with China, while the United States is also restricting China's development. U.S. policies are often designed to gain leverage in negotiations and ultimately serve its own interests. For example, during the U.S. China tariff war, tensions escalated at one point, but both sides eventually returned to the negotiating table because they both understood that maintaining high tariffs for too long would result in a lose-lose outcome for their economies and their citizens. By contrast, Japan's choices appear far more short-sighted and reactive. In the long run, such decisions could provoke stronger countermeasures from China, further weakening Japan's already fragile international standing and industrial competitiveness. What about you? How do you see Japan's approach in this situation? To not miss out on our future projects and news updates, please make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. We will continue to provide you with more exciting and interesting content.